ऐसी ट्रेजेडी इससे पहले कभी नहीं हुई और शायद आगे भी कभी ना हो, लेकिन ये फिर से दोहराई गई ये कहानी। इंसिडेंटली टाइटैनिक की एक बिल्कुल ही आइडेंटिकल सिस्टर थी, जिसका भी अंत टाइटैनिक की तरह ही मिलता जुलता हुआ और मेडिटेरेनियन के गर्म पानी में अपनी बड़ी बहन के अंत के कुछ सालों के बाद भी उसका भी अंत हुआ। उसका नाम था दोस्तों ब्रिटेनिक और वो ब्रिटेन की सबसे बड़ी शिप थी। टाइटैनिक के डिजास्टर के बाद उसको एकदम री इंजीनियर किया गया था जिससे कि वो कभी ना डूबे, लेकिन 21 नवंबर 1916 को सिर्फ 55 मिनट में ही ब्रिटेनिक डूब गई। वो टाइटैनिक से भी ज्यादा जल्दी डूबी। नमस्कार दोस्तों, मैं हूँ आपका होस्ट, आपका दोस्त भामरी, लेकर के आया हूँ आपका फिर वही पॉपुलर शो दुर्घटनाएं डिजास्टर्स, आपके फेवरेट इंटरनेट रेडियो स्टेशन रेडियो उड़ान पर। एक ऐसा शो जिसमें हम चर्चा करते हैं इस धरती पे घटित अलग अलग समय में अलग अलग दुर्घटनाओं। बेलफास्ट आयरलैंड का वो ड्राई डॉक जहां पे की दोनों शिप्स बनी थी, ब्रिटानिक और टाइटैनिक। 1910 की अगर हम बात करें तो वो इतना बड़ा था जिससे कि ये दोनों शिप वहां पे बन सकी और ये दो शिप जो थी उस जमाने में सबसे बड़ी शिप थी जो कि किसी इंसान ने देखी थी तब तक। दोस्तों ब्रिटानिक जो कि माइटीएस्ट शिप थी ब्रिटेन की ऑफ द फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर, उसकी कहानी इतनी पॉपुलर नहीं है जितने की उसकी बड़ी बहन टाइटैनिक, जबकि दोनों का अंजाम मिलता जुलता हुआ था। लेकिन टाइटैनिक पे इतना पब्लिसिटी हुई टाइटैनिक के डूबने के बाद, जितने भी आई विटनेसेस बचे थे, सर्वाइवर्स बचे थे, उनके इंटरव्यू रिकॉर्ड हुए और काफी कुछ हुआ, लेकिन ब्रिटानिक कहीं उतनी पब्लिसिटी नहीं गेन कर पाई।
After the Titanic disaster, Britannic was re-engineered to be even more unsinkable. And yet, on the 21st of November 1916, she sank in just 55 minutes, 3 times faster than Titanic.
ब्रिटानिक दोस्तों फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर के दौरान डूबी थी 1916 में, और जैसा कि हम सब जानते हैं कि फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर था 1914 से लेकर 1918 तक। इस शो में जो है बात करेंगे साइमन नोल, जो कि ओनर हैं ब्रिटानिक रेक के और काफी एक्सपर्ट समझे जाते हैं ऑन दी ब्रिटानिक। और हम कई सर्वाइवर्स के भी अकाउंट सुनेंगे आज के शो में, जिससे कि एक स्टोरी पुट टुगेदर हो सके कि आखिरकार उन 55 मिनट वो लोगों ने क्या फेस किया और उनके क्या एक्सपीरियंसेस रहे regarding the Britannic.
Now, the Britannic story isn't nearly as well known as the Titanic story, and I'm trying to kind of unpick it really and discover what happened.
Titanic sank very high publicity. I mean, they interviewed as many survivors as possible, newspaper coverage all over the place. Britannic sank in the First World War.
OK. Are there any key characters, any relatives, anybody I can talk to who can give me a kind of picture of the people that were on this ship?
I can give you some starting points.
Yeah.
For instance, we have here Captain Charles Alfred Bartlett. He was in command of the Britannic on the day that she sank. Archie Jewell, who was also on the Titanic. Actually, one of Titanic's lookouts, believe it or not. Violet Jessop, very experienced White Star Line stewardess.
Oh, she's beautiful, isn't she?
She is indeed, yeah.
Anyone else that would be able to shed any more light on what it might have been like that day?
Sheila Macbeth, nurse, kept a very detailed diary.
One of the big challenges, and you know this as a historian, is to hear the voices of people who weren't educated, the people who were, I don't know, right in the bowels, at the coalface, doing the work, but not necessarily ever recorded.
There's the story of an Antrim seaman, we believe, who was actually on the Britannic. He tells a very, very dramatic story down in the engine room.
But he was from Ulster.
He was an Ulsterman.
Can you also give me a sense of what the ship was doing? Was this a sort of, to all intents and purposes, an ordinary day?
Pretty routine, yeah. I mean, Britannic was a very, very safe posting. She was a hospital ship. She was, in theory, inviolable, could not be attacked.
Yep.
It was beautiful, calm, clear weather. There was nothing unusual about what was going on. They'd all been sitting down to breakfast, and suddenly the world collapsed.
अभी तक सब कुछ ठीक चल रहा है on HMHS Britannic. Everything and everything is fine up till this point. HMHS का मतलब है His Majesty's Hospital Service, जो कि Britannic से पहले उसके इनिशियल थे.
The day before, we'd worked like factory hands, tying up all the kits ready for the next day, so that we might rest the day before the patients came on board. What a day of rest that was.
हम सुनते हैं मार्गरेट मेन को, जो कि भतीजी हैं ऑफ वायलेट जेसप, जो कि एक स्टुअर्डेस थी, और इत्तेफाक की बात समझिए कि वो दोनों शिप पे मौजूद थी और वहां से बची थी. वो टाइटैनिक पे भी थी और ब्रिटानिक पे भी थी. और दोस्तों, ये मानने की बात है कि वायलेट ने जो है बहुत ही कंप्लीट अकाउंट लिखा है रिगार्डिंग द सिंकिंग ऑफ द ब्रिटानिक.
Do you remember your sort of first time meeting her and what she was like?
She was great fun. I think she was just highly practical as well as everything else. And she never complained about the things she brings up in her memoirs, and certainly of the terrible experiences she'd had. She didn't talk about. It wasn't until later that I realised what she'd been through. I've got this thing here.
Is this the original?
Oh, well, this is 1930 typing, you know.
Wow.
I can read a little bit out if you like.
I'd love you to.
Yes. It was the Feast of Our Lady, November the 21st, 1916. The early sun was shining through the windows of the lounge. They were there for Mass.
Everybody scrambled down to breakfast, talking and joking. For breakfast was quite the nicest, friendliest time on board.
The ship was steaming 20 knots, weather fine and the sea smooth, bound to Mudros to embark sick and wounded.
But this is just the calm before the storm. At 8:12 a.m., disaster strikes. अब ब्रिटानिक के पास सिर्फ 55 मिनट रह गए. एक जोर का धमाका हुआ जिसने कि पूरे जहाज को हिला के रख दिया.
I'd only managed 2 spoonfuls of porridge before bang, and a shiver right down the length of the ship.
There was a horrible jar and a grinding noise, but down below we hardly realised what had happened.
At 8:12 a.m., a tremendous but muffled explosion occurred. The ship trembling and vibrating most violently fore and aft.
Britannic has taken a hit on the lowest deck, just ahead of the boiler rooms. लेकिन शिप में जितने भी लोग सवार हैं वो ज्यादा घबरा नहीं रहे हैं इस बात पे, क्योंकि जब ब्रिटानिक की फेमस सिस्टर टाइटैनिक डूबी थी 1912 में, तब उस समय ब्रिटानिक तब बन रही थी बेलफास्ट आयरलैंड में, और जो उनके शिप मैन्युफैक्चरर्स थे उन्होंने इसको रीडिजाइन किया था, काफी सेफ्टी प्रिकॉशंस ली गई थी इसके साथ, एंड शी वाज द मोस्ट अनसिंकेबल शिप इन द वर्ल्ड। और जब 1914 में फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर शुरू हुआ तो ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट ने ये डिसाइड किया कि सेफ और रिलायबल ब्रिटानिक जो है बहुत अच्छी एक हॉस्पिटल शिप बन सकती है। Britannic used to sail peacefully from Southampton to Greece via Naples, और वो अभी 5th वॉयज पे है अपनी, और अब तक तकरीबन 12,000 जख्मी ब्रिटिश सोल्जर्स को वापस ब्रिटेन ला चुकी है वो। Now, in the wake of the Gallipoli disaster, it is on a mission to bring home another boatload of wounded soldiers.
This is Kea Island. It lies 60 miles southeast of Athens on the beautiful Aegean Sea. And 100 years ago, His Majesty's hospital ship, the Britannic, sailed past here on its way to the port of Mudros to pick up thousands of injured Allied troops who'd been fighting the Turks. But little did the 1,065 sailors and doctors and nurses on board realise that this would be the Britannic's last journey. During my 25 years of diving, I've always dreamed of reaching Britannic. Now, on the centenary of her sinking, I've been lucky enough to join highly experienced British and American divers on a rare expedition to the wreck of Britannic.
It's 100%, so there it is, it's in order.
Team leader Richie Kohler has dived both Britannic and her sister Titanic. What do you think the risks are on a dive like this?
It's an incredible hostile environment at 400 feet. We're using multiple different gas mixtures. Some would not support life here on the surface, and yet they are life-supporting at 400 feet. If you make a mistake, it can cost you your life.
As a diver who's dived shipwrecks all around the world, why is Britannic so special?
Like many other people, the story of Titanic is what drew me to Britannic. And not to be glib, I fell in love with the younger sister. She's even more beautiful. When you look at Titanic, it's dark, it's gloomy, it's broken apart, it's in pieces. When you look at Britannic, she's in beautiful, clear water, surrounded by life.
As the Britannic is hit by the explosion, able seaman Archie Jewell is working on the deck right above the point where the explosion took place. और ये आर्ची जूएल जो थे एक सर्वाइवर हैं टाइटैनिक से भी, वहां से भी उस हादसे से भी वो बच गए थे। सुनिए आर्ची की ग्रेट ग्रेट नीस टेंजिंग जूएल क्या कहती है।
So he was on the Titanic first?
He was, yes. He was on the Titanic as a lookout.
So was he responsible for the Titanic hitting the iceberg?
He was a lookout, yes, but not the lookout.
Right.
He was actually in bed, and it was the sound of the impact that woke him.
Right. When you look at the photo of him here, you know, he looks very formal, he looks very, I don't know, composed. But presumably he must have been hugely upset, hugely traumatised by the experiences that he went through.
There was plenty of times he describes openly weeping when he's reminiscing about the things that he saw. And I would imagine even though he had a relatively short-lived life, it was something that stayed with him the whole time.
So do we know his role in the story of Britannic?
We do. Archie wrote a very detailed letter about what happened on the morning where it happened on the ship and in the days and the weeks that followed on his journey. He's quite descriptive in his letter. There's one part that always sort of stands out, and that's the part where he says, "But thank God I am not dead."
That was the nearest to death that I've ever been. I was working right close to where she was struck. Sort of water coming in, the smell of powder. Before I knew where I was, this man came rushing out of a cabin door right where she was struck and ran into me. Struck me with his head just above my eye, so I was blood all over. I ran up to the boat deck. And then someone tied up my eye. So I was like old Nelson. Only one eye.
Archie was incredibly lucky. The first piece of evidence I want to see is the site of the explosion that set Britannic on the path to disaster. But I'm going to need some high-tech help to reach the wreck. Our base at sea will be the extraordinary Russian ship, the U-boat Navigator. It's been designed specifically to support underwater exploration. Two multi-million-pound mini-subs will guide us and light our way to the wreck, while remote-controlled underwater cameras will track our every move with all the safety backup of a space mission. There is no clear single reason why Britannic was lost, just a series of clues which I want to see for myself. So I've plotted an exploration path that will take me from the bow, where the explosion hit, up to the captain's bridge, deep down to the boiler room corridor, and finally to the mighty propellers at the back. Each of these points on the ship will help me understand what led to Britannic's end.
Ready? Let's go. Okay, lunch.
Everything changes as we leave the world of air and enter the ocean. Deep sea diving is the closest thing on Earth to exploring outer space. This line will guide us to Britannic. The subs and the robot cameras will light our way in the darkness when we're 400 feet down. And then, out of the gloom, she appears. Britannic. I'm overwhelmed. Seeing Britannic is like seeing her sister Titanic as we imagine her to be. Majestic, intact, and so peaceful on the seabed.
अब सुनिए जोनाथन मिचेल को, जो कि नर्स शीला मैकबेथ के ग्रैंडसन है, और उनसे सुनते हैं कि शीला के ने क्या बताया था इस बारे में कि क्रू ने कैसे रिएक्ट किया था जब वो The Britannic was hit.
Did you ever get a sense of the sort of woman that Sheila was before you were born?
She was a strong-minded, strong-willed woman,
Yeah.
like many of her family. And She'd also, of course, have been driven in the way that everybody was in those days by patriotism and a feeling that you ought to do your bit.
Right. What sort of age is she at this point?
26.
Did you ever get a sense of how Sheila felt or reacted when the explosion happened?
Yes, my father decided to record her memoirs, many, many hours worth, and she talks about exactly this.
We were at breakfast, and we were sitting in this huge dining room. There was this sudden bang of the ship shook.
Major Priestley told us to sit down again, as the siren had not sounded. It was quite the best thing to do, as the doors were few and narrow, and there might have easily been a panic. As it was, there was only a most unnatural silence.
The engines were going full speed at the time, but they were stopped, and everyone was ordered to stand by.
We're about to see what Sheila and the unnamed sailor could not. We've come to the exact point of the explosion that crippled Britannic. 100 feet back from the bow of the ship is the immense crevasse in the hull where Britannic was torn apart. This massive canyon was caused first by the explosion holing her, and later, when she sank, she was split apart by the ship hitting the seabed.
लेकिन ब्रिटानिक में वो एक्सप्लोजन किस कारण से हुआ था? अगर ब्रिटिश प्रेस की माने तो जर्मन्स ने एक डिफेंसलेस हॉस्पिटल शिप के ऊपर टॉर्पीडो छोड़े थे। लेकिन क्या ये बात सच थी?
At that particular stage of the war, the Germans were not targeting hostile ships, and so it's unlikely.
But, you know, presumably mistakes are made, or presumably not everybody follows the rules. I mean, this is a war, after all.
Yeah. The German commanders at this stage were under increasing pressure not to antagonise America.
Right.
So the potential consequences for a commander who made a mistake could be quite heavy.
Given that was the case, given that was the rule, why were torpedoes ever really in the mix as a possibility?
Whenever ships were sunk in the war, there was always someone who saw a periscope or a torpedo.
Right.
On Britannic, for instance, we had 2 definite sightings of torpedoes. The problem is that one person saw the torpedo at the front of the ship on the starboard side, and the other person saw it on the back of the ship on the port side. So it was one of these situations whereby people see things, but they're not really quite sure what they see. Right. So if indeed it was a mine, do we know that that area of the sea had been mined? We do, as it happens. This is a gentleman here. Captain Lieutenant Gustav Sees. He was the commander of the German submarine U-73. She was a mine-laying submarine. Right. 3 weeks before Britannic hit the mine, he laid mines in the exact same waters where she went down. So you're saying it was a mine, not a torpedo? Absolutely. Categorically? Categorically. Bottom line, wrong place, wrong time.
My first impression was that we had struck a mine and would probably be safe.
Captain Charles Bucklet, जो कि responsible थे for the 1065 passengers और soldiers जो कि ब्रिटानिक पे सवार थे और उनको तकरीबन 33 साल का एक्सपीरियंस था और इस कारण से ब्रिटानिक पे जितने भी लोग सवार थे they would have been in safe hands. उनके ग्रैंड नेफ्यू रिचर्ड एलिस को सुनते हैं अब, जो कि उस कैप्टन के बारे में बताते हैं और वो कहानियां बता रहे हैं जो कि उन्होंने अपने फादर से सुनी थी.
Did your father give you any idea of what sort of man he was?
Well, he was quite a large man, 17 stone.
Wow.
So he's a big man.
Yeah.
He was renowned for his caution. He was a cautious captain. But also, you know, a man in command, a man, if you were in his presence, you knew that he was in command, he was in control.
So what was his route up to becoming captain of the Britannic?
He joined the White Star Line. He worked his way up the ranks very quickly. He captained some of their largest ships. He then came on shore, he was marine superintendent, and in fact he oversaw the sort of final fitting out and the crewing of the Titanic.
Oh, really?
So he knew these big ships enormously well.
So given his experience, you know, the fact that he actually oversaw the kind of final fitting and crewing of the Titanic, surely it would have made sense if he'd been the captain.
Well, I think if the timing was just very slightly different, then, you know, a few months later, he almost certainly would have been captain of the Titanic. And, you know, with his cautious approach, you know, the Titanic disaster would never have happened, and that's what the wags would tell you.
And when the Britannic was struck, do you know, does history recall how Captain Bartlett reacted, what he did?
He was off duty, but he raced up to the bridge. He did what was needed to be done.
SOS. Have struck mine off Port Nicola, Kia Island.
This is the bridge where Captain Bartlett stood that day. Incredibly, the tiles are still on the floor from where the ship was steered. Though it's becoming a man-made reef, if you look carefully, you can see the steering gear underneath. And if you rub a little, you can still find the glass of the telegraph that Captain Bartlett used to send orders to the engine room. But time has taken its toll. It's only thanks to the wood and walls rotting away that the most astonishingly intimate relic has been revealed. Captain Bartlett's bathtub. He was the last man to sit in it, and the plug is still in. One story goes that he'd been in his tub when the explosion sent him running in his pyjamas to the bridge.
Emergency quarters were sounded on all alarms throughout the ship. The engines stopped and orders rung below to close watertight doors. I gave orders to clear away all boats and have all possible ready to be sent away.
As one man, the whole of the saloon rose from their seats. Doctors and nurses vanished to their posts. Men jumped over presses with the agility of deer. In seconds, not a soul was to be seen, and not a sound had been uttered.
ब्रिटानिक का जो क्रू था वो भी सोसाइटी के रूल्स ही फॉलो करते थे, और जो इंसान बिलो डेक काम कर रहे थे उनको कंसीडर किया जाता था ऑफ द लोअर ऑर्डर. अब ऊपर की साइड जैसे नर्सेज जो है लाइफ बोट की तरफ बढ़ रहे थे, या ऊपर सो कॉल्ड हाई ऑर्डर के जो लोग थे वो लाइफ बोट्स की तरफ बढ़ रहे थे. जो लोग नीचे के डेक्स में काम कर रहे थे इन द बॉयलर रूम, वो बढ़ते हुए पानी से लड़ रहे थे, और इनमें से कितने ही लोग जो हैं वो मारे जाएंगे.
When this explosion hit, there must have been people in those boiler rooms.
Boiler rooms would have been full, absolutely, yes. There would have been about a couple of hundred people down there working. One gentleman in particular is a guy here by the name of Bert Smith. Now, he was working in the forward boiler room, number 6, when the explosion occurred. You know, the medical staff kept him away from it. Bert was experiencing it firsthand.
Look at this is amazing. So he was right
He was right there. He was right there.
Bert Smith groped his way into the exit tunnel, his one route to possible safety. There he was met by the full weight of in-rushing water, which pinned him against the boiler. So the explosion had happened, and that water was then being effectively funneled down that exit.
Absolutely. Huge
that
damage.
Corridor.
Yeah, it's like a tidal wave. All coming in one direction, right up against Bert.
Grabbing a handrail, he was swept almost upside down in the salty torrent. Then, somehow, he managed to scramble up a 90-foot staircase to the boat deck. It's an amazing story.
He was a very lucky man.
Wasn't? Well, sort of. So Bert and these people down below knew exactly what was happening and would have had a very, very good sense of the very real danger this ship was in, whereas the nurses and Captain Bartlett, way up in the sort of posh bits, wouldn't have known at all.
जो स्टाफ ऊपर की साइड थे, जैसे वॉलेट जैसे, वो बता सकते हैं कि कैप्टन जो है बार्कनेट किस तरह मैनेज कर रहे थे इस पूरी सिचुएशन को, और वॉलेट जो है इस टाइम बहुत ही प्रिपेयर्ड है, क्योंकि वो यही चीज एक बार पहले टाइटैनिक पे ये सब देख चुकी है। और वॉलेट लिखती हैं कि वो क्या-क्या चीजें अपने साथ लेके गई थी जब वो ब्रिटानिक छोड़ा।
I sorted out things to take, the things I treasured the most. There was my prayer book and my toothbrush, Ned's ring and my clock, of course.
और ये बात गौर देने वाली है कि वो जो घड़ी वो उठा के लेके गई थी लास्ट मोमेंट पे, that has outlived both Violet and Britannic.
Is this the clock?
Yeah.
What an extraordinary keepsake. I can't believe she had the presence of mind when the ship is going down to go down to her cabin and fill her pockets. But it sounds like that's quite typical of her character. Would you say so?
Yes, I think it is. And also, her brothers had told her, don't forget your toothbrush.
I stuffed all sorts of things into my pockets. Even a roll from the breakfast table.
ऊपर ब्रिज पे कैप्टन बार्कनेट को कोई आइडिया नहीं है कि नीचे कितना पानी शिप के अंदर घुस रहा है, जो ब्रिटानिक के वाटर टाइट बॉयलर शूट से दे प्रिवेंट वाटर फ्रॉम कमिंग इन, बट स्टिल शी इज सिंकिंग एंड शी इज सिंकिंग वेरी फास्ट। और वो डिसाइड करते हैं अब कि किसी तरह शोर के करीब पहुंचा जाए, और जैसे जैसे ब्रिटानिक शोर के करीब पहुंच रही है, she is sinking very fast.
The forward holds filled up rapidly, and water was reported in numbers 5 and 6 boiler rooms.
ब्रिटानिक के wreck का मुआयना करने पर पता लगता है कि उसके जो वाटर टाइट कंपार्टमेंट्स थे, उनके दरवाजे वो पूरी तरह खुले हुए थे। तो इसका यही सेंस है कि जब कैप्टन बार्कनेट फुल स्पीड पे चल रहे थे, ब्रिटानिक को चला रहे थे इनफैक्ट, कि जिससे कि जल्दी से जल्दी वो किनारे तक पहुंच के अपनी जहाज को बचा पाए, वो उल्टा और पानी भर रहे थे इस शिप में, क्योंकि उसके वाटर टाइट कंपार्टमेंट के दरवाजे खुले हुए थे।
Steering gear appeared to have failed, so I turned the ship to port to head for land by the engines.
लेकिन ब्रिटानिक इस तरह से डिजाइन की गई थी कि इतने कंपार्टमेंट भरने के बावजूद भी उसको किसी तरह फ्लोट करते रहना चाहिए था, और डूबी तो चलो ठीक थी, लेकिन इतनी जल्दी डूबी, इससे भी जो है सब लोग एकदम परेशान हो गए थे।
But stoker Bert Mills has told us that water is flooding through the boiler room corridors. Could the explanation lie right here, inside the corridor to the boiler rooms? But I can't go in. It's so frustrating. Britannic's interior is so dangerous, the Greek government has now banned anyone from going inside. But two of our dive team did get inside her before the ban. Evan Kovacs took the dangerous path through the boiler room corridor, also known as the Farmer's Tunnel, to try and confirm if the watertight safety doors were fully closed. Evan, what did you see that very first time you went into the wreck?
We travelled down the fireman's tunnel, and eventually we got to the watertight door. That was open. Through the next set of boilers, and then that opens up, and that's where we saw the other watertight door open, fully open, not even partially closed.
What this means is that as Captain Bartlett is steaming full speed, trying to get to Kiev to save his ship, in effect, he's actually ramming more of the water, forcing more water into these boiler rooms and flooding the ship even quicker.
So why do you think the watertight doors didn't close?
Now, it's been a mystery for nearly 100 years. We know that Captain Bartlett threw the switches to electrically close the door. Maybe the wires were broken. Engineers believe that the explosion twisted the ship, and that prevented or wedged the doors and wouldn't allow them to close.
So, maybe it was a technical error, but Ritchie suspects the all-too-human behaviour of the boiler room workers. These men were not trained sailors.
They were referred to as the Black Gang, and you would have stokers and firemen, trimmers, and people that just had to work in an incredibly unforgiving environment. I mean, can you imagine, Andy, being at the very bottom of the ship with the lights flickering and a gush of water coming in through that fireman's tunnel, and you have seconds to make decisions? Am I going to sit here and try to monkey around with this door, or am I going to run for my life?
Some people wouldn't blame them for running, but even if they did, it doesn't make the sinking of Britannic their fault. She was so well engineered. She should stay afloat a lot longer than 55 minutes, even with this many compartments flooded.
शीला मैकबेथ की जो फैमिली है, उन्होंने जो है पॉइंट आउट करी थी फिंगर एट द डॉक्टर प्रेजेंट ऑन द शिप. वो कहते हैं कि किसी डॉक्टर ने ऑर्डर दिए थे कि पोर्ट होल्स जो हैं दोनों साइड ऑफ द शिप खोल दिए जाएं सो एज टू वेंटिलेट द वार्ड्स. लेकिन वो कौन डॉक्टर है और किसने ये ऑर्डर दिए थे, इस बात का पता नहीं लग पाया है अभी तक. और एक्सपर्ट्स ये मानते भी हैं कि अगर ये पोर्ट होल्स नहीं खोले गए होते तो शायद शिप नहीं डूबती और वो किनारे तक पहुंच गई होती without any casualty.
Somebody had opened all the portholes on both sides of the ship so as to ventilate the wards in which there were in fact no patients requiring ventilation. Now, who this doctor was who had given these orders, nobody by now will ever know. Nobody has ever come forward and said it was me. But we have it happened, and it shouldn't. The ship should have been unsinkable. It should have beached on the island of Sia with no casualties whatsoever.
We didn't get any inrush of water where we were. That seemed to be in the forward part of the ship. As the list grew worse, we knew what was happening.
एक अनाम नाविक जो थे, उनका ऐसे मानना था कि चाहे ब्रिटानिक हो चाहे उनकी बड़ी बहन टाइटैनिक हो, जिस दोनों के बारे में बोला जाता था, ये कभी नहीं डूबेंगी. लेकिन इन ब्रिटानिक पे एक ऐसा प्रभाव पड़ गया था कि वो उसको नीचे की तरफ ले जा रहा था.
No one on board imagined she'd go down as quickly as she did.
With the doors open, water rushed down the farmer's passage and flooded boiler room 6. From there, it spread through another set of open doors into boiler room 5, and now the whole forward part of the ship is flooded. And as the ship sank, it was listing to starboard. And with water rushing through the portholes in E-deck, the ship's fate was sealed.
लेकिन फिर भी ब्रिटानिक के डूबने पर इतनी कैजुअलिटी क्यों? अगर हम टाइटैनिक से कंपेयर करें तो ब्रिटानिक पे बहुत सारी लाइफ बोट्स थी और सुबह 8:36 पर कितने ही लोग ऊपर डेक्स के ऊपर इकट्ठे हो गए थे, रेडी टू बोर्ड दीज लाइफ बोट्स.
We were kept hanging over the side of the boat for a long while, as the vice captain, who was looking after the lowering of the boats, had to dash off in the middle to call back some 14 or 15 firemen who'd gone off from the poop deck in a boat that should have held about 84 persons.
कोई भी कैप्टन के ऑर्डर के बगैर कोई भी लाइफ बोट नहीं जानी चाहिए थी कायदे अनुसार. लेकिन शीला कहती है कि उन्होंने देखा था कि एक लाइफ बोट में कुछ बॉयलर रूम के लोग सवार होके पहले ही निकल पड़े थे.
They were desperate to get away, but of course they were the masters of their own fate because the abandoned ship command had not been given. Frankly, you would have expected officers to have stopped it, but clearly they were unable to prevent these men sort of grabbing the boats, if you like, and going.
उधर कैप्टन बार्कनेट जो है हर संभव कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि ब्रिटानिक को किसी तरह बचाया जाए, and he is driving it fast towards the केयर आइलैंड, लेकिन उनको इस बात का पता ही नहीं है कि उनके कितने क्रू जो है लाइफ बोट लेके निकल ही पड़े हैं.
He would never have expected anyone to be in the water because he had not given the abandoned ship command, and he is the only person as captain who could do that. So he had the right to expect that nobody would be in the water. They should not have been there.
There's a couple of things that I want clarified. The first is that I thought lifeboats could only be released from a ship on the orders of a captain.
Yes, that's right.
So how on earth could Captain Bartlett be unaware that there were lifeboats in the water?
The initial order after the explosion was to uncover the boats, to fill them, and to lower them over the side. No order was actually given to release the boats.
So how did they end up being released without his authority?
It could have been part of the chaos, the confusion that was going on. We do know that a couple of boats actually went away off the stern without permission, had to be called back. It depended where your officers were. A degree of control was lost in places.
People were in a panic?
May have been in panic, yeah.
And what state was the ship in at this time?
At this stage, very serious. She's increasingly listing to starboard on the right-hand side. As she moves forward, she's flooding so fast in the bow that the stern is now beginning to rise up. As a result, the poor propeller is now working above the surface.
Experts मानते हैं कि इस समय तक शिप पे काफी chaos था, जिसकी वजह से ये भी जो lowering of the lifeboats हुई without the captain's order, वो इसी कारण से हुआ. और ब्रिटानिक की हालत इस समय तक बहुत ही बुरी हो चुकी थी. वो काफी लिस्ट कर रही थी, काफी टिल्ट कर रही थी towards the starboard side, और बहुत ही तेजी से उसमें और पानी बढ़ता जा रहा था. As the propeller rises, it pulls towards it all the lifeboats which were already there in the water.
I'm now approaching that very propeller. 23 feet of enormous spinning power.
Meanwhile, Violet is hanging from a lifeboat at the side of the ship, and she can now clearly see the propellers turning, which were 23 feet of spinning rapidly.
Just at that moment, a lifeboat caught my eye. It had been lowered safely to the water, but then drifted with sudden impetus, resisting the efforts of skilled oarsmen, right into those cruel, swirling blades.
It was cutting the poor fellows to pieces. His legs and arms and bodies flying everywhere. What made it so bad? The blades, they were half out of the water, so they were coming down right on the boat.
Eyes were looking with horror at the debris. And the red streaks all over the water.
दूसरी तरफ, on the bridge, Captain Bartlett is unaware of all the things which are happening and all the tragedy which is going on at the back of the ship. उन्होंने अभी तक शिप को अबैंडन करने के ऑफिशियल ऑर्डर नहीं दिए हैं, और ना ही ये ऑर्डर दिए हैं कि लाइफ बोट्स को पानी में नीचे लोअर किया जाए. तो वॉयलेट, आर्ची और अन्य क्रू मेंबर जो हैं would now be fighting for the lives.
The ship started listing to starboard as our lifeboat began to lower. A young sea scout near me took a deep breath as he got in. He was only a kid.
So tell me a little bit about this Sea Scout.
Well, that little Sea Scout was George Perman. He was 15 at the time. He was actually one of the lift operators on board, and he was very fortunate to be on duty because his quarters were actually destroyed in the explosion. So he ran to the lifeboats and got in, and I actually had time to speak with him in the late 90s, and this is what he said.
I made my way to the top deck, and on my way to my lifeboat, I was given this lifebelt, then lowered into the water.
His first shock came as our lifeboat, hooking itself onto an open porthole, tilted us. Then, righting itself again, started gliding rapidly down, making a terrible impact upon the water. After we touched the water, I turned around to see how my small friend had taken the impact, only to find him halfway up the ship's sides, still attached to the rope.
Violet was beckoning him to come into the sea before it was too late, so he lowered himself down into the water. Nothing worse really than really bad burns in his hands, but George was very psychologically scarred for the rest of his life. He saw the red blood being flecked against the side of the white ship, and they always thought that George's family, although they were quite tall people, George never really grew very much, and they believed that his growth had been stunted by the shock of what he saw.
So George is in this red, blood-filled water. It's unimaginable what that must have been like. Violet, she's still in the lifeboat, is she?
She's still in the lifeboat. She's surrounded by this scene of complete carnage, you know, blood everywhere, hacked bodies in the water. Must have been very traumatic for her.
जिस लाइफ बोट में वायलेट सवार थी, उसमें एवरी पर्सन वॉज फॉर हिमसेल्फ, और धीरे धीरे एक एक करके लोगों ने यही डिसाइड किया कि तैरने के बाद उनके चांसेस ज्यादा होंगे, तो वो एक एक करके पानी में कूद के तैरने लगे और उन्होंने अपनी लाइफ बोट छोड़ दी.
Fumbling hands, struggling unsuccessfully to get control, every man Jack in the group of surrounding boats took a flying leap into the sea, taking to the water like a vast army of rats. It was extraordinary to find myself, within a few minutes, almost the only occupant of the boat. One man, a doctor, was standing in the silence beside me. I turned around and saw Britannic's huge blades churning and mincing. Everything near them, men, boats, everything was just one ghastly whirl. In another moment, I would be under those blades. Unless... I have always been afraid of the water. I'd not learned to swim. Then, I just jumped overboard, down and down into bottomless depths, clutching at my life belt. Why had I put it on over my coat was one thought as I felt its weight dragging me down deeper. I kept my eyes tightly closed and held my breath.
आर्ची की बोट पे सवार लोगों की यही होप थी कि वो किसी न किसी तरह ब्रिटानिक से ही जुड़े रहे, लेकिन उसमें से भी लोग पानी में कूदे और वो सारे ब्लेड्स के प्रोपेलर ब्लेड्स जो थे ब्रिटानिक के, उसमें कट के रह गए.
I shouted out not to let go of the boat, but someone let her go, and away we went right towards the blades. So I shouted, jump overboard, and most of us jumped in the water, but it was no good. It was pulled right in under the blades.
वायलेट जो है अब ट्रैप हो चुकी है उस लाइफ बोट के नीचे पानी के अंदर, और उनके आसपास सबके शरीर के टुकड़े जो प्रोपेलर ब्लेड से कट के रह गए थे वो बह रहे हैं.
I felt myself rising and my head came into violent contact with something solid. Something that prevented me from reaching the surface. There was another terrific crash above me, and something struck the back of my head. My brain shook. Panic seized me, and I groped blindly in that water. There was a thundering center of noise. Suddenly, I touched something. An arm that moved as mine moved. My fingers gripped it like a vice, until my almost senseless head remembered that it is said that people drowning retain their hold after death, bringing death to another. I let go.
अब जैसे वायलट पानी के नीचे गायब हुई, दूसरी तरफ आर्ची इज पुल्ड अंडर द प्रोपेलर। वो पानी में डूबती हुई वायलट, उसने किसी बहती हुई चीज को पकड़ा, and just in time she burst out on the surface.
Archie could hear the blades swirling above him, and he goes on to write, "The last thing I heard was the blades hit the boat, and I closed my eyes and said goodbye to this world."
But I was struck by a big piece of the boat and I went under the blades, and I was going around like a top. And when I came up again, I came up under some wreckage, and I couldn't get clear. And everything was going black to me when someone on top who was struggling pushed the wreckage away, and I came up just in time. I was almost done for. There was water coming out of my nose and my mouth. But there was this poor fellow drowning. He caught hold of me. But I had to shrug him off. So the poor fellow went under.
I was sinking. My life belt was not sufficient to support me. I saw another floating by, so I grabbed at it. At last I had something to hold on to.
And just in time, Violet bursts upwards.
The first thing my eyes beheld was a head near me. A head split open like a sheep's head, served by the butcher. All around were limbs, wrenched out as if some giant had torn them in his rage. The dead floated by so peacefully. There were men coming up, only to go down again for the last time. A look of frightful horror on their faces.
कैप्टन बाकनेट ने जो है प्रोपेलर को बंद किया, क्योंकि अब तक जो है ब्रिटानिक बहुत बुरी तरह से डूब रही थी। उनको जो पीछे ये खून खराबा हुआ, इसके बारे में उनको कुछ भी आइडिया नहीं था।
Do we know now how many people died?
We do. There were 30. 9 of them were from the medical corps, so they weren't actually ship's crew. The rest were ship's crew, but the majority of them were from what was known as the Black Gang. They were stokers, firemen, who had come up from below decks when the water entered.
So these men whose jobs were to be right in the bowels of the ship, who were right there when the mine struck, reacted in probably the only way they possibly could. Sheer blind panic and survival kicking in to get them out of that place where the water was flooding in, only to end up going to their deaths by a very human mistake.
It was just a totally unnecessary loss of life, because if procedures had been followed, it should not have happened. But you can understand in the chaos and the panic, particularly coming up from below decks, that it's understandable that people want to get off the ship. But of course, that was actually what led to their deaths.
30 लोगों की इस हादसे में मौत हुई। जिसमें से 9 जो थे वो मेडिकल स्टाफ के थे और बाकी 21 जो थे वो शिप के क्रू थे। और वो शिप के क्रू भी वो जो बिलो डेक्स काम करते थे, फायरमैन, बॉयलर रूम के, और वो सब लोग थे जिन्होंने इस सिचुएशन में एकदम पैनिक की तरह रिएक्ट किया और एकदम सिर्फ उनके दिमाग में एक ही चीज थी कि किसी न किसी तरह वो अपने आप को बचा सके। और उस बचाने के चक्कर में उनको अपनी जान से हाथ धो बैठने पड़े क्योंकि प्रोपेलर ने उनको काट के रख दिया था गाजर मूली की तरह। शीला जो कि नर्स थी बाय प्रोफेशन, उनको अभी भी ड्यूटी पे रहना था amidst all this carnage.
In our boat, we'd got well away from the sinking ship and busied ourselves with the wounded whom we'd pulled out of the water. Our brandy flasks were invaluable. Also aprons and pillowcases, which were torn up as bandages.
Captain Bartlett ने finally ordered दिया to abandon the ship.
Our chief engineer, Mr. Fleming, who was cool through everything, was the last of our department to join us on deck. He had to swim for it, narrowly escaping being drowned.
The ship was sinking very quickly then, going by the head and listing to starboard. Soon the water came to the bridge.
सुबह के 9 बजे सिर्फ 48 मिनट बाद आफ्टर द एक्सप्लोजन कैप्टन बार्टलेट और उनके 2 सीनियर ऑफिसर्स जो हैं ब्रिज पे खड़े हैं और जहाज डूब रहा है और वो कुछ भी नहीं कर पा रहे इस सिचुएशन में। क्या वो टाइटैनिक के कप्तान की तरह वो भी अपनी शिप के साथ नीचे जाएंगे? कैप्टन बार्टलेट was the last person who left the ship. वो सीधा ही शिप से पानी में उतर गए जिसे कहते हैं, और उसके मोमेंट्स बाद पानी जो है ब्रिज तक पहुंच गया और टाइटैनिक डूबी जिस और बॉव साइड से डूबी पहले। और जब ब्रिटानिक जो कि इतनी बड़ी थी साइज में, जब फाइनली समुद्र तल से टकराई तो एक भयंकर आवाज हुई जो कि बाहर 30 मीटर की दूरी तक भी सुनाई दी। सुबह 9:07 पे Britain's most famous and largest ship of World War I, HMHS Britannic sinks. Or it just took 55 minutes to sink the most unsinkable ship. ब्रिटानिक ने अपनी सिस्टर शिप टाइटैनिक को ज्वाइन किया समुद्र तल पे और वो वहां पिछले 100 साल से ज्यादा से है।
I've heard that it is a captain's duty to be the last one to abandon ship. Is that true?
Absolutely, that's the traditional way, and that's what happened. He ordered his officers to leave the bridge. They left. He blew the whistle for one last time, and then he literally walked off the ship into the sea.
Assistant Commander Dyke, having reported to me that all had left, I told him to go, and shortly after followed myself, walking into the water by the forward boat gantry on the starboard side.
Moments later, the bridge was underwater. With sirens wailing and gurgling, Britannic sank bow first. But she was so massive that when she hit bottom, her stern was sticking over 30 meters out of the water.
The noise of her going resounding through the water with undreamt of violence.
At 9:07 a.m, Great Britain's largest and finest ship of World War I is gone. It's taken just 55 minutes to sink the most unsinkable ship in the world. Britannic joined her sister Titanic on the seabed, where she has lain for 100 years.
Well, that is certainly something. The most impressive shipwreck I've ever seen. You can peer in through the windows and you see the medical room with the equipment where the doctors and the nurses would have worked, and those injured soldiers would have been treated. And it's that, these glimpses of humanity, that's a reminder that it's the people and their stories that are so closely interwoven with the story of Britannic herself.
ब्रिटानिक पे जितने भी मौतें हुई थी उन सब का अंत बहुत ही दुखद और खतरनाक हुआ था. They had all met a violent end. और टाइटैनिक के जो सर्वाइवर्स थे, रादर पैसेंजर्स और क्रू जो बच गए थे, वो तो कितने, तो उनमें से नॉर्थ अटलांटिक के बर्फीले पानी में ही जम गए थे जब वो वेट कर रहे थे फॉर दी हेल्प टू कम, जो कि बहुत देर के बाद आई थी. दूसरी तरफ ब्रिटानिक जो थी वो शोर के करीब ही डूबी थी, तो इसलिए जो है वहाँ के फिशरमैन पहले पहुंचे थे लोगों को बचाने के लिए, और उसके बाद 3 ब्रिटिश डिस्ट्रॉयर्स भी वहाँ पहुंच गई थी जल्दी से, और उन लोगों ने जो पानी में लोग थे उनको बहुत जल्दी बचा लिया गया था. इसलिए जो है ब्रिटानिक और टाइटैनिक की जो कैजुअलिटी फिगर्स है उसमें बहुत अंतर है. जो ब्रिटानिक पे डेथ्स हुई थी वो मेनली सो कॉल्ड लोअर ऑर्डर की हुई थी. जो लोग नीचे के बिलो डेक्स काम करते थे उनमें से ज्यादा तो लोग वहीं के थे. ब्रिटानिक में से 1035 लोग बच गए थे, जो कि डॉक्टर्स, नर्सेस, सेलर्स और सोल्जर्स थे, वुंडेड सोल्जर्स, वो बच गए थे.
A sailor pulled a chair from the water and gave me a piece of the back, which I guarded safely under my coat.
And here it is.
No way. She
Absolutely.
didn't keep that for the whole of her life. Can I see it?
She kept it the whole of her life. She gave it to my father. My father gave it to me. I keep it in my living room.
What an amazing story.
शीला जो थी 103 साल की उम्र तक वो जिंदा थी, और towards the end of her life she also featured in a documentary on the finding of the Britannic's wreck.
So, at the age of 86, she helicoptered off from Athens to Sia. She takes this back with her. So, back goes the chair top to the island, and off she goes submarining.
No way.
To see the wreck of the Britannic. She has a look inside it. And then she put flowers into the water above the wreck.
Oh.
And then, of course, a few years later, James Cameron directed Titanic.
That's right.
And you'll remember the instance there of Rose.
Yes.
Throwing
the
flowers.
older lady.
Absolutely.
Whose story is being told.
So we always say in our family that Rose was built as a character upon my grandmother.
लेकिन दोस्तों कैप्टन बार्कलेट का क्या हुआ? सुनिए उनके बारे में क्या बताया जा रहा है।
Our commander was retrieved from the waters in his pajamas. His face as unperturbed as ever.
He was swimming in the water for about 30 minutes or so before he was picked up by one of the lifeboats, and it was only then that he was told about the tragic and unnecessary loss of life.
Do we know how he felt when he made this terrible discovery?
I think he was immensely sad about it, because it should not have happened. If those men had not panicked and been in the boats, there would have been no life lost whatsoever. And if, in fact, if the nurses hadn't opened the portholes to air the cabins, you know, he would have managed to save that ship as well. But he did not sail a ship again.
All those persons connected with the Britannic were affected by it.
When I tried to stand, I discovered that my leg had been deeply torn and badly gashed. I had not felt it happen. All I had been conscious of underwater was my head being battered, almost to a pulp.
She didn't realise at the time she had this terrible blow on her head, but she fractured it in 2 places. But I know she had very troubling time with her head later, and the strange result was that she lost her hair later.
Really?
I think it's a stress thing.
वायलेट जेसप जो कि दोनों शिप टाइटैनिक और ब्रिटानिक पे सवार थी जब वो दोनों डूबी थी, और काफी इफेक्ट भी पड़ा था उनकी इन दोनों बातों का उनके जीवन पर, लेकिन फिर भी वो अपनी सारी जिंदगी शिप स्टुअर्डेस की रही और दुनिया के हर कोनों को उन्होंने देखा.
I do remember when I was 4 and going to her house always scared me a bit because she had an alligator hanging, a stuffed alligator hanging by the staircase. You know, I used to look at that going upstairs.
Imagine.
She brought it from South America.
What happened next to Archie?
When Archie was picked up with the wounded, he then goes on to write, "I could not feel my legs and arms when they got me into the boat."
There was this one sailor, he was with me in the boat. His legs were nearly cut off. They picked him up, but he didn't live long.
So Archie survived the Britannic. He'd survived the Titanic. He was 27 years old. What did he go on to do next?
He went on to work on another hospital ship, a smaller vessel called the SS Donegal. And he was on it for just 5 months before it was struck by a torpedo. And he died on the 17th of April 1917, and he was just 28.
आर्ची जो कि टाइटैनिक और ब्रिटानिक दोनों के हादसों से बच गए थे, वो एक और हॉस्पिटल शिप पे कार्यरत रहे और अगले साल यानी कि 1917 में उनकी मौत हुई जब वो शिप was hit by a torpedo. वो अनाम नाविक जिसका की शो के शुरुआत में जिक्र हुआ था, उसका कुछ भी पता नहीं लगा कि क्या हुआ उनके साथ आफ्टर द ब्रिटानिक ट्रेजेडी. वो टाइटैनिक और उनकी छोटी बहन ब्रिटानिक की तरह हमेशा से इतिहास से गायब हो गया.
Well, we've listened to the testimonies of our witnesses, we've amassed the evidence, and it seems that Britannic sank because of bad luck and human error. And the people who lost their lives alongside her did so because in their desperation to survive, they made a decision with fatal consequences. But there's one other puzzling factor. Why has a story as dramatic as this remained unknown for so long? Well, think about the timing. It was 100 years ago. The tragedy of the Britannic was just one more in the monumental tragedy that was World War I.
आज के शो सुनने के बाद हम यही कह सकते हैं कि ब्रिटानिक डूबी बिकॉज ऑफ बैड लक एंड ह्यूमन एरर, और जो मौतें हुई इस ट्रेजेडी में दे वर बिकॉज कि पीपल पैनिक्ड इन दिस सिचुएशन, और उन्होंने जो पाथ चूज किया अपने आप को बचाने का, they met with fatal consequences. तो दोस्तों, इसी के साथ खत्म होता है आज का शो हमारा दुर्घटनाएं डिजास्टर्स का, और शो चल रहा था आपके फेवरेट इंटरनेट रेडियो स्टेशन रेडियो उड़ान पर। और आज हमने शो में चर्चा करी 1916 में घटित एक घटना, the sinking of the HMHS Britannic, जो कि टाइटैनिक की छोटी बहन थी, जो कि खुद डूब गई थी 1912 में। तो मिलूंगा मैं आपसे अगले हफ्ते ठीक इसी दिन, ठीक इसी समय, ठीक इसी रेडियो चैनल पर, और चर्चा करेंगे हम एक और किसी दुर्घटना डिजास्टर्स। तो दीजिए अपने होस्ट और दोस्त भामरी को इजाजत समेटने की आज का शो। अगर आपको मुझे फीडबैक देना हो रिगार्डिंग माय शोज, तो आप मुझे मेल कर सकते हैं, और मेरी मेल आईडी है bhamri.r@gmail.com, यानी कि bhamri.r@gmail.com। और लूंगा मैं आपसे इजाजत। तो नमस्कार, शुभ रात्रि, शब्बा खैर, गुड बाय, गॉड ब्लेस, और आप सुनते रहिए रेडियो उड़ान, अ फ्लाइट ऑफ लाइफ।